Know what nickname is given to another famous ranger from this period, a fellow by the name of William A. Wallace. Know what his nickname was. It also talks about the average life expectancy of a Texas Ranger during this period. Know what that was. And lastly, as far as that chapter goes, know who is the Texas Ranger that helps to develop the famous 6-shot Colt revolver. It's kind of the prototype of the gun that'll win the West. So know who that is. Okay, next one, chapter 15. Know what location in Texas this chapter is primarily talking about. It is kind of a frontier town. Frontier towns tended to be wide open, kind of anything goes, law and order not quite established yet. Although by 1875 in this particular place they are starting to establish law and order, but it's still a pretty wild town. It's a cattle town. Every one of these towns tended to have a bad part of town, where you would find the gambling houses and the dance halls and the saloons and whatnot, and the brothels. Know what that part of town was called in this particular location. Know what the most notorious of the saloons in this location was. Know who the author says the most famous or notorious or infamous, whatever you want to call him, outlaw to get in trouble in this place was. You've all heard of him, I promise you. Especially if you've seen the movie Tombstone. Hint, hint. Hint, hint, Val Kilmer played. There's a lady they talk about in there called Lottie Daniel, or the Poker Queen. Know what her real name was. You're also going to have a gunfight, a very famous gunfight that happens in this place. And if you know the name of the saloon, it shouldn't be hard to figure out the name of the gunfight. So this kind of helps to cement this place's reputation as being a violent frontier town. They do make some assumptions in there. They do make some conclusions. What is one of the reasons why this place was so violent? They give a particular reason for that. And then also know, was this place, know what the author says, was this place exceptionally violent? Was it moderately violent? Was it really not all that violent by comparison to the rest of these cattle towns? You know, Wichita, Fort Hays, Abilene, all these places. So just know, is this normal? Is it exceptionally violent? Is it not very violent? How does it stack up? They also talk about some of the popular pastimes in this town. He lists drinking, whoring, and gambling as the main pastimes. But there's also one more pursuit that a lot of folks would do for recreation. Know what that is. Lastly, chapter 16, Annie Black and the Soiled Doves of San Angelo. Just out of curiosity, does anybody know what that term soiled doves refers to? Prostitutes. Prostitutes. So that gives you a rough idea what this is about. So know what soiled doves means. What was that referring to? Know how prostitution first comes to San Angelo. Anybody in here from San Angelo? Pardon? You ever been to Miss Hattie's brothel museum?
I was born there, but
Haven't been back?
haven't been back forever.
You know San Angelo?
Interesting thing.
Is it?
Of course, the last time I was there was still such a thing as the Houston Oilers, and they had training camp there, so that's why I was there. So know why prostitution first comes to San Angelo. There's also a comment in this chapter from one of my absolute favorite Western historians, a fellow by the name of D. Brown. He has something to say about saloons and the ladies that frequent. Why were these places so popular? He has a theory about that. Know what that is. Know what county San Angelo is located in. In the 1880s, kind of at the height of the Victorian age, even the legal system couldn't bring itself to call these ladies hookers or prostitutes or whatever. And so when they would prosecute them, they wouldn't prosecute them for prostitution, they would prosecute them for something else. Know what that term that they use is. Like many other rough and tumble frontier towns, San Angelo is also going to have what is kind of euphemistically referred to as a red light district. Anybody know what that means? It's where the whorehouses are, right? And it comes from the fact that back in the day, they used to, houses of ill repute, they used to put a red light in the window so you'd know they were open for business. So kind of that evolved into any place where there's a whorehouse, that's considered to be the red light district. San Angelo had one to know what they called it in San Angelo. Know who Annie Black is, how she makes her living. Shouldn't be too hard to figure out after these first questions. Know who her daughter was. And lastly, know what one of the most popular tourist attractions in San Angelo is today. So if you know all those things, you ought to be in pretty good shape. Now, let's see if we can finish up with the Battle of San Jacinto. We have a little bit of time left. I'll be happy to take your questions about